Greetings everyone and welcome to my YouTube channel. I'm your host Captain Ryan. Today's YouTube video features Intervention, and he is in the Mighty Montana. Yes, the Mighty Montana, a battleship that a lot of people really don't take as seriously as they should, especially not considering that the Yamato, the other tier 10 battleship in the game, seems to be just that little bit better with the penetration values on its main guns. And of course, the armor values that it has means that trying to nail a Yamato from the bow-on meta, not usually the easiest thing to accomplish. The battle is Domination Match Mode. It is the Okinawa map, which I actually really like this map. And Intervention is divvied up with somebody we've all seen before, Everin, in the Minotaur just in front of him. As the battle gets underway, the majority of his team is looking like they're headed to the C and B cap points. And that's usually a good start in this kind of battle. On this particular map, not too many players run the risk of going up to A, and the reason not too many people do that is simply because there's a giant island that runs the entire length that generally tends to keep your guns out of the game until you get clear of the A cap point. He gets shots out here at an enemy Kurfürst, does a little bit of damage, a lot of over penetrations there, but a good opening salvo and a good way to get the range on some of these ships. Now, Intervention is somewhere between choosing the A and B cap points, but if you'll notice, the enemy team is in the process of capping A, and they're capping it quite quickly, which tells me that at least one of their destroyers is up there, since he's not seen. And again, that's one of those advantages and disadvantages to going to A. If you're in a destroyer and you go to A, and the enemy team brings in a cruiser with radar, you're going to have a bad time. If you're in a cruiser and you go to the A, and the enemy team shows up with a battleship, you're going to have a bad time. And if you're in a battleship and you go to A with no radar support, and the enemy has gone there with a destroyer, you're going to have a bad time. And since not a lot of people tend to go to A at the beginning of the battle, if you've got a carrier on the enemy team, well, that carrier can pretty much just send his planes up to the A cap point without really having to worry about losing them all to the plethora of battleships and cruisers. Intervention's trying to get more shots out here on this cruiser, and he doesn't seem to be having too good of luck with RNG trying to land solid hits. Now, of course, he slowed way down. He started backing up a little bit. Here comes some torpedoes, and yeah, unfortunately, it looks like he is going to get hit by one. The question is he going to get hit by a second one? And unfortunately, he does. But he doesn't get hit by more than two. That destroyer is probably not too happy about the angling that Intervention has there. Starts recovering some health to get that repaired up, but at the very least, we now know that there is an enemy destroyer, and that he is definitely in a position to detect and shoot at Intervention. He's taking more shots out. He takes shots out at that Yamato up there, but of course, that bow-on meta, a lot of those shots really didn't do much damage. This destroyer that's up here is playing a little bit coyly, and he's using islands for cover as Intervention keeps dropping in and out of detectability. If you're in a battleship and you're in this kind of position, that is an excellent way to determine if an enemy destroyer is in range and detecting you, because that little detection symbol will pop up. Now, if you have priority target, you can usually tell if you're being targeted by that destroyer. Enemy destroyer pops his smoke screen, which is going to keep him from being obliterated by Intervention's secondaries. More torpedoes coming in here. Takes one on the bow. Is he going to take a second one on the bow? He does. 2 again from this same cheeky little destroyer. Both teams at this point have lost one of their destroyers, but both teams have an equal number of destroyers. Since that enemy destroyer is in smokescreen and Intervention has stopped firing at things, there's nothing actually detecting him, and that could be a bit of a problem for that destroyer because, of course, Intervention has his div mates here, one in a destroyer and one in a very angry, rapid-firing British cruiser. And British cruisers love nothing more than to pick on high-tier destroyers because their semi-armor piercing just rips into them. And even when it doesn't, well, its rate of fire is ridiculous. The secondary batteries on the Montana are actually pretty good, and it's one of those ships that I think a lot of people don't fully realize. You can actually spec with a secondary build and get your secondaries out to 10 kilometers, or just under 10 kilometers. Now, they don't do the same kind of damage and fire starting that, say, the Kurfürst or the Yamato would, but they can still do a lot of damage, especially to destroyers who get a little too close. Now, Intervention and his div mates are up here capping the A cap point, and this is really where things are falling apart for the enemy team. You remember, I pointed out that if the enemy team had a carrier, they could probably send aircraft to anything that was capping in the A cap point and pretty much go unmolested in that process. Well, at this point, the enemy CV hasn't bothered to send any planes over to the A cap point. In fact, I haven't seen any of his planes anywhere near Intervention and his div mates. But that is going to change in the short future. Now, he's got the broadside of a Yamato to shoot at, and the terrain impact indicator there just goes away, so his shots just clear that island, and with any luck, he'll be able to land a nice big hit. But all of his armor piercing shatters apart. That is really bizarre. Here come the aircraft from the enemy CV. And, of course, dealing with a Tier 10 battleship, US battleship on top of that, well, he's going to lose a lot of his planes in the process coming up here to deal with him. And, of course, friendly div mates also switching on their anti-aircraft result in only one torpedo actually making it to his ship. As he disappears into the smokescreen, he's no longer detected, but that CV knows exactly where he's at. It's a big battleship in a smokescreen. He really can't miss. So he's got his dive bombers rolling in over that smokescreen in an effort to try and find and hit him. Another enemy destroyer pops up here. More torpedoes coming in. Fortunately, Intervention able to dodge most of them. Still gets hit by one. Montana does have a really big ass and not the quickest rudder shift time. Unlike the Yamato, which seems to have a ridiculously mobile body, the Montana not as much. Though the Montana does seem to sit lower in the water, making it just that little bit harder to hit. Looking at the situation, his team has managed to lose 2 more ships, so the enemy team is actually up on ships, and the enemy team has capped the C cap point, and they're in the process of capping B. Now, as Intervention comes around this island here, he's not detected, and that's partly to do with the destroyer who's hiding in the smokescreen. Of course, now he is detected, he is being targeted, but not by any of the angry big gun ships. And again, he's got the broadside of a Yamato to shoot at. So he gets clear of the island so all of his guns can get hits out there, and just look at the amount of damage that he manages to do to that enemy Yamato. And that enemy Yamato still sailing broadside, doesn't seem to care one iota in the world that something from his broadside just nailed him with a massive Citadel hit. Well, that Yamato gonna regret that decision, as Intervention gets more shots out and manages a double Citadel and sinks that Yamato. Whoever said the Yamato was invincible, especially against the Montana, they lied. Of course, it does help that, again, that Yamato continued to broadside to Intervention. He's got another battleship up here. This looks like the Iowa, who is also broadside onto him. And if the Montana loves nothing more, it's then to shoot broadsiding battleships. Unfortunately, he gives a little too much lead there, and all of his shots come off the bow. He takes return shots from something with a lot of big, angry guns, but they don't manage to citadel him, which is a good thing. The Yamato, like the Iowa, does have that issue with its citadel sitting a little bit too high in the water, making it incredibly easy to broadside citadel this thing. Enemy destroyer up here has popped up. He's left his smoke screen. Shots are going out there. Pretty much him and his division mates, along with everything else that cycled up to the A cap point with him, is trying to shoot at that destroyer. And why not? It is a tier 10 destroyer, and it is a very dangerous machine. Enemy carrier pops up here, and this is kind of where I would have probably played this a little bit differently, as I would have turned my guns onto that carrier just because I don't want to keep dealing with his aircraft. But of course, guns are already pointed the other way, and he's got a broadside Iowa to shoot at, so fires off shots again. Can he cause big damage? Yes, he does. Yet another citadel. And that Iowa is probably not too happy about his life decisions at this particular moment, but doesn't seem interested at all in angling his ship against this Montana. So Intervention gets more shots out. His friendly div mate leaves him a nice big smokescreen to hide in as he manages another citadel and sinks that Iowa. Friendly cruiser back there, he's getting picked on by the enemy CV's planes, but he's returning the favor by dealing with that carrier, and that carrier not in the best position. Of course, carrier does manage to take out the cruiser. More torpedoes coming in here. Again, those are going to be from that tier 10 destroyer, and manages to citadel and destroy yet another ship, this time a cruiser. Again, also broadside on. Now, the enemy team does have at least one ship in the B cap point. The fact that Intervention has been able to pretty successfully take out as many ships as he has is really what's keeping his team in the points lead. Because the enemy team has managed to capture a cap point, what's keeping them in the game is the fact that they have a cap to begin with. Enemy Rune pops up there. He's one of the ships that's in the process of capping the B cap point. Shots out on him. Doesn't manage to citadel him. Gets a lot of over-penetration. It's a little unfortunate. Earns his Confederate award in the process. Now that Rune, of course, sees a wonderful Montana out in the open, decides to start shooting high explosive at him, and with any luck, he'll be able to set him on fire. And that wouldn't be the best for Intervention. His friendly div mate in the destroyer up there manages to stay just out of detectability range as he gets torpedoes away, but his torpedoes don't hit, which is a little unfortunate, but he opens fire anyway with his guns. Secondary's opening up on this Rune, and that's when the enemy CV finally lands some hits. Secondary's blazing away on this Rune. He's very low health. He gets his rear guns out at him. Can he finish him off as well? Yes, he does. And that is yet another kill in his tally. Now, he's turning his ship hard around, and this is actually twofold. One, it takes him away from the action that's behind him. Two, it lets him keep all of his guns on the same side of the ship, so he doesn't have to spend all of that time turning them around, so that he can pick on this aircraft carrier. This aircraft carrier managed to survive the engagement with the cruiser quite well, but I don't think he's going to survive an engagement with a Montana, considering that was all over-penetrations and regular penetrations, no citadels, and he just lost half of his HP. Ouch. But Intervention has decided, nah, screw him. He might not necessarily be worth it, considering I'm still getting shot at by other things. He does get one last salvo out there as he opts to turn back around. Double citadels him, high caliber, Kraken Unleashed, and another kill. And a devastating strike, because he finished him off with more than half his health left. So now, again, he's getting his ship turned around here, and he's angling away. A lot of people, especially in battleships, tend to think their armor is invincible all the time, and they never realize that they need to angle. Incidentally, a lot of cruisers are under the impression that because they have 203mm armor piercing, they can penetrate the bow and stern of ships when they're angled, regardless of the ship. So it's always fun to see the surprising number of armor-piercing rounds that tend to bounce off. Unfortunately, the fat ass of the Montana does not have a shallow draft and gets hit by that torpedo, and that nearly kills him. But of course, he activates his damage control ASAP, and that's probably the only thing that saved him at this point. The enemy team is down to just 3 ships, including 1 destroyer. And unfortunately, that 1 destroyer nearly killed him. But of course, the enemy team is now in the process of capping the A cap point. This leaves his team no caps at all, and this cruiser is not letting him have a good time of it. The question is, can he kill this cruiser before that cruiser manages to set him on fire and finish him off? If he got set on fire right now, it would pretty much spell the end of him. But this cruiser, again, with the armor piercing, in reality, he should be firing high explosive in a vain effort to set him on fire and finish him off. Nearly dead, he's got not a lot of health left, but he finished off the cruiser anyway, and that's enough to set his team over on points for the victory. Just look at that, 265,000 damage done, 576,000 credits earned in that battle. Confederate Dreadnought Kraken, Devastating Strike, and High Caliber. A nice whopping number of citadels, and of course 6 kills. But you see that XP there, 4,259. Yeah, 4,000 of that XP is base XP. Intervention has done something I don't think I've seen in a very long time, and certainly not seen in a Montana. 4,000 base XP. 4,000. Top of the team for XP earned, and of course, obviously, he's earned all of the base XP. Anyway, that's it for today's video, folks. If you like the video, hit that like button, hit the subscribe button, leave a comment down below. If you'd like to get semi-regular channel news and updates, you can do so by liking and following me on Facebook. If you'd like to help support me and my channel, you can do so by becoming my supporter on Patreon. If you've got a replay like this one that you'd like to see featured on my channel sometime, with my wonderful commentary voice, you can send it to my email. And if you'd like to watch me play World of Warships, among other games, live, usually on Sundays at 10 a.m. Pacific Standard Time, you can do so by following me on Twitch. You can find the links for all of those in the video description down below. And as always, I'll see you next time. This is Captain Rye, signing off.